Yai dai 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 dai, yai dai 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 dai, yai dai dai dai, yai dai 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 dai, yai dai 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 dai. Yai dai dai, yai dai 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 dai, yai dai dai, yai dai 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 dai, yai dai dai, yai dai 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 dai. Min hametzar karatia anani v'merchavia. Min hametzar karatia anani v'merchavia. Anani, anani, anani v'merchavia. Anani, anani, anani v'merchavia. From the narrow places we call out to Yah, and Yah answers us from the great expanse. Shabbat Shalom. Welcome to the expansiveness of this holy day and the beautiful sunshine here in Ashland, and the expansiveness of our hearts that hold each other and come together as community. Welcome to everyone online. I can see you. I'm waving to the screen or waving to the camera. And we have a few here with us today in person. Thank you, Barry, for being there on Zoom and helping out. And thank you to Carol Sunahara for leading the Torah service this morning. Today is a special Shabbat, Shabbat Zachor, and we'll be hearing more about that. It is also the first time we're entering the parsha or the book of Vayikra, also known as Leviticus. And Vayikra is, and he called out to the people of Israel. And so I wanted to bring in that Min HaMetzar, and just thinking about all the ways we call to each other, and we call out to show up for each other. So important to be able to call out and then to be received and heard. So honoring Parshat Vayikra in our book of Vayikra as we enter into Shabbat Zachor, and we'll hear more about that in a little while. Moda'ani is on page 84. Moda'ani lefanecha melechai v'kayam. Moda'ani lefanecha melechai v'kayam. Moda'ani lefanecha moda'ani lefanecha. We are so grateful before the source of mystery, the source of salvation, the source of all love, to be alive on this and every day. Modim anachnu lach. Elohai Neshama can be found on page 89. We lift up the purity of our souls and the purity of the souls of the other. Elohai Neshama shenatata bi tehorai Elohai nishama shenatata bi tehorahi. Elohai nishama shenatata bi tehorahi. Elohai nishama shenatata bi tehorahi. Baruch atah Adonai hamachazir nishamot livgarim meitim. Boundless are you, Eternal One, who restores souls to us every day. For our morning blessings this morning, the traditional words can be found on page 90, but I wanted to invite us to share any words of gratitude we might be feeling today. So first I want to invite online if there's anyone who wants to unmute themselves and name things they're grateful for. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam.
For family.
I can't hear anything. Is this people saying?
For Temple Zoom.
Oh. Carol, would you repeat it? We didn't hear you. Steve's working on the sound.
For our families.
Oh,
Thank
can't
you.
Hear you. Oh no.
It's okay.
Okay, so sorry we can't hear you, but hopefully everyone online heard you. I know Steve could hear you with his earphones on. All right. Any gratitudes here in the room? Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu chei ha'olamim. For sunshine, Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu chei ha'olamim. To be in the room with Robin, David, Emily, Rabbi Jackie, and Ross, and Don, and Steve. Amen. Oh, and me. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu chei ha'olamim. For a great Torah study this morning, says David Sherman. Yasher koach, Carol. We're going to try again. If someone can say something online, we're hoping we can hear it this time. Oh, it's not working. Oh, okay. We'll figure it out next time. No one say anything. Okay. All right. Well, we're going to lift up all the gratitudes of our hearts online. And Carol, I know we could see your mouth moving, and we lift up whatever the beautiful thing is that you're grateful for. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam. Hanoten la'ayef koach, who gives strength to the weary. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam. Hama'avir sheina me'einai u'numa me'afapai. Who wipes sleep from my eyes and slumber from my eyelids. We turn to page 117. Baruch Shamar, we bring in the wow of the creation of the world and the mystery of that creation, and as we enter into verses of praise. Baruch Hu, Baruch Shemo, Bruchahi, Baruch Shema, Baruch Hu, Baruch Shemo, Bruchahi, Baruch Shema, Baruch Hu, Baruch Shemo, Bruchahi, Baruch Shema, Baruch she'amar v'haya olam. Baruch oseh v'reshit. Baruch omer v'oseh. Baruch ozer umekayem. Baruch merachem al haaretz. Baruch merachem al habriot. Baruch mishalem sachar tov lireav. Baruch ma'avir afela umevi ora. Baruch chaylad v'kayam lanetzach. Baruch poteh umatzil. Baruch hu, Baruch shemo, bruchahi. Baruch shema, Baruch hu, Baruch shemo, bruchahi. Baruch Shema. You abound in blessings, eternal are God and sovereign of all worlds. God, compassionate source of life, your people are filled with your praise. You are lauded and glorified in the tongue of your devoted servants. With the songs of David will we praise you, eternal one, our God. With praise and melody we will magnify, praise, glorify, and call out your name and crown you as majesty. Baruch atah Adonai, melech mirhulal batishbachot. Blessed are you, eternal one, sovereign and extolled with praise. We turn to page 127 for Ashrei. For Psalm 92. It is good to give praise to the Eternal, to chant psalms to your name. Tov lehodot l'Adonai u'lizamer l'shimcha elyon. Tov lehodot l'Adonai u'lizamer l'shimcha elyon. Lehagid baboker chazdecha ve'emunatcha balelot. Lehagid baboker chazdecha ve'emunatcha balelot. Tov lehodot l'Adonai u'lizamer l'shimcha elyon. Tov lehodot l'Adonai u'lizamer l'shimcha elyon. Lehagid baboker chazdecha ve'emunatcha balelot. Lehagid baboker chazdecha ve'emunatcha balelot. We turn to page 132 for Ashrei. Happy are we who dwell in your house. We shall ever praise you. Selah. Wow. Ashrei Yoshvei Vetecha Oje Hallelujah Oje Hallelujah Ashrei אושרי ביתך אוג'ה הללוכה אוג'ה הללוכה ואנחנו נברך יה מעתה ועד עולם. הללויה, הללויה. Page 138, Psalm 150. Hallelujah, 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 hallelujah. Hallelujah, 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 el bikocho, hallelujah, birki hauzo, hallelujah, vigvurotav, hallelujah, kerov kudlo. Hallelujah, 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 beteka shofar, hallelujah. בנבל וכינור, הללוהו, בצלצלי שמע, הללוהו, בצלצלי תרועה. הללוהו, 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 הללוהו. Hallelujah, 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 hallelujah. Kohan Shama, te hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah. Kohan Shama, te hallelujah, hallelujah. Baruch. Amen. The top of page 140. The breath of all life shall bless your name, Eternal One, our God. Nishmat kol chai tivarech et shimcha, Adonai Eloheinu. Page 143, second paragraph from the bottom. Shochen had maharom v'kadosh shemo v'chatuv raninu tzadikim b'Adonai la yisharim navati hila b'fi yisharim tihitromam uvdivrei tzadikim tihitbarach uvilshon chasidim tihitkadash uvkarev kedoshim Tihitalal Yishtabach Shimcha La'ad Malkeinu. Brachot ve'hodaot me'ata ve'ad olam. Baruch ata Adonai el melech gadol batishpachot el haodaot Adon haniflaot habocher b'shirei zimra melech elchei ha'olamim. In that final blessing, it says, you abound in blessings, eternal one, sovereign God, great in praises, God of thanksgiving, source of wonders, source of miracles. And in a class last week I was teaching, we talked about this idea, do we believe in miracles? Do we believe in wonders? And maybe we don't necessarily believe that there's a supernatural God magically healing people, magically ending wars, but there are miracles every day, and there are wonders every day. And one of my professors, I was quoting, just talking, I think he was even quoting someone else anyway, but just think of something that just marvels you this morning. Just conjure up something. Maybe it's just your breath, someone you love, having fallen in love, the laughter of children, the spring blossoms. May you be able to swim in the wonders of your life on this Shabbat. Lift them up today. Baruch Hu can be found on page 149, and we give thanks for the wonder of community. We rise. Baruch Hu et Adonai HaMevorach. Baruch Adonai HaMevorach. Baruch Adonai HaMevorach Leolam Va'ed. Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu Melech HaOlam Yotzer Or Uvorei Choshech Oseh Shalom Uvorei Et HaKol. In the Yotzer Or prayer, the prayer for light, we praise and lift up light, and we lift up holiness, and we lift up creation, and we lift up angels. And on page 154, there's a line that says, Kulam ahuvim, kulam birurim, kulam giborim. All are beloved, all are pure, and all are mighty. And I wanted to chant this morning, but share just this beautiful blessing from one of my colleagues, Rabbi Alex Weissman, who says, may we all be like these sanctifying angels who are calling these words out, increasing holiness, and especially in the face of dark times, in the face of hatred and domination and war and injustices that we know all too well are in our world. May we all be like these sanctifying angels and remember that we are loved. We think clearly and we act courageously. And together, all of us doing that, what a force we are. So please join me in this chant again. Kulam ahuvim, kulam birumim, kulam giborim. Kulam ahuvim, kulam birurim, kulam giborim. All love, all clarity, all power, all love, all clarity, all power. Kulam ahuvim, kulam berurim, kulam giborim, all love, all clarity, all power, all love, all clarity, all power. Kulam ahuvim, kulam berurim, kulam giborim, all love, all clarity, all power, all love, all clarity, all power. Our Chatima, our ending of Yotzer Or are the words of Or Chadash, found on page 156. May there be a new light shining upon Zion, and may we all soon be worthy of that light. Baruch atah Adonai Yotzer HaMe'orot. Blessed are you, Eternal One, Creator of the cosmic lights. Ahava Rabbah is on page 157, and we lift up the love of the universe. I want to do a call and response today. It goes like this. I've done it before. It's been a little while. Ahava Rabbah, Ahavtanu, Ahava Rabbah, Ahavtanu, Ahava Rabbah, Ahavtanu. Bottom of page 157. Ve'ha'erinenu betoratecha ve'dapek lebeinu b'mitzvotecha ve'yached levavenu le'ahava u'lira et shemecha ve'lo nevosh ve'lo nikalem ve'lo nikashim le'olam va'ed ki v'shem kodshecha agadol v'hanora b'atachnu Nagila v'nismecha b'shuatecha. We gather the four corners of our talitot, all that's separate. והביאנו לשלום מארבע כנפות הארץ, ותוליכנו קוממיות לארצנו, כי אל פועל ישועות אתה, וקרבתנו לשמך הגדול סלע באמת, להודות לך על יחדך באהבה, ברוך אתה אדוני, אוהב עמו ישראל. The Shema is on 160. Please respect your custom if it is to rise. Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. Baruch Shem Kavod Malchuto Le'olam Bayit. I want to just chant these first opening words of the Ve'ahavta, but please feel free to daven the words in completion on your own. Ve'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha bechol levavecha uvechol nafshecha uvechol meotecha ve'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha bechol levavecha uvechol nafshecha uvechol meotecha ve'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha bechol levavecha uvechol nafshecha uvechol meotecha. Ani Adonai Elohechem Emet. Bottom of page 165 is the beginning of the Michamocha prayer, recalling the miracle, the wonder of the parting of the sea. We can think of our own miracles and wonders of openings when there were closings, a path becoming evident when we thought there was no way out. And it's also a prayer for redemption, for peace. It's just a calling forth that we've known this in our lives and we may continue to know it, and may all who are stuck become free. Tehilolel Elyon Baruch Hu Umvorach Moshe uvnei Yisrael lecha anu shira b'simcha rabba v'amru chulam mi chamocha ba'elim Adonai mi kamocha nedar b'kodesh nora tehilot osef eleh שירה חדשה שיבחו גאולים לשמך אספת הים יחד כולם הודו והמלכו ואמרו אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד. צור ישראל קומה בעזרת ישראל ופדחנו ממך יהודה וישראל גואלנו אדוני צבאות שמו קדוש ישראל ברוך אתה אדוני גאל ישראל. For our Amidah today, I'm going to invite a silent Amidah. It begins on page 167, but I want to lift up 3 intentions for the first three blessings. The first blessing is for the avot ve'imachot, our ancestors, our mothers and our fathers. It's a prayer of gratitude for our ancestors. I've been talking with a lot of people this week about ancestors and ancestral lands, and whether from wherever it is that we're from, to be in awe of those who prevailed through all that they prevailed to make way for our lives. And I love to think of my ancestors when I pray the Amidah, this first blessing. I think of my grandparents, my grandmother fleeing Poland in World War I, which was actually Ukraine and is now Ukraine. My grandfather born on the way from Russia in England, fleeing pogroms and conscriptions and things, and other family from Russia fleeing pogroms. So we all have our stories, every one of us, no matter what our lineage. And there are miracles and wonders in that. We lift up our ancestors. For the second prayer, I invite us, it's a prayer called Gevurot. It means strength and power. It's opportunity to lift up all the courage and the strength of the universe, calling it in for ourselves, recognizing how it's been for us in our life, how it is for us in our tradition, how we get it from our Torah and from our prayers, and how we yearn for it for each other and for our world. And for the third blessing, it's a prayer of Kedusha, of holiness, of sanctification. We were talking earlier with other congregants this week about radical amazement, to be in awe of all that is amazing. And there's a line in the Kedusha that said, may the whole world be filled with holiness. And so may we find holiness everywhere we look, even if it's in the littlest bit. So let's just invite you to if you want to take that in silent prayer, or please turn to the words in our Siddur, lifting up our ancestors, lifting up Gevura, strength, lifting up holiness and finding it and making it and sanctifying it. Adonai sifatai tiftach ufi yagi tehilatecha. May God open my lips that I might utter her praises. Ose shalom bimroma, Ose shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael, v'imru, v'imru amen. Yaseh shalom, Yaseh shalom. Shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael, Yaseh shalom, Yaseh shalom. Shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael, Yaseh shalom, Yaseh shalom. Shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Yaseh shalom, Yaseh shalom, shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael, ve'al kol yoshvei tevel. So we're now going to enter our Torah service, and I invite up Emily Simon to lead that for us.
To have my mask caught around my earlobe. How many of us have had that experience? Definitely. Whew, okay. Please join me on page 215 for the service for taking out our sacred Torah. Ein kamocha v'Elohim Adonai v'ein k'ma'asecha Malchutecha malchut kol olamim umemshaltecha bechol dor vador. Adonai melech, Adonai malach, Adonai imloch le'olam va'ed. Adonai oz le'amo yitain. Adonai yivarech et amo v'shalom. Av harachamim heitiv avirtzoncha et Zion. Tivnei chomot Yerushalayim. Tivnei chomot Yerushalayim. Ki vecha levad bataknu melech el ram v'nisa adon olamim. Vayihi ben Zoach Aharon vayomer Moshe Kuma Adonai v'yafutzu oivecha v'yanusu misanecha mipanecha ki mitzion tetzei Torah ki mitzion tetzei Torah udevar Adonai mirushalayim Baruch shenantan Torah Torah Baruch shenantan Torah Torah le'amo Yisrael b'kedushato.
Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad.
Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad.
Echad Eloheinu God Kadoshimo.
Echad Eloheinu, Gadol Adonenu, Kadosh Shemo.
Gadlul Adonai iti, Unaromema Shemo
Yakdav, Lecha Adonai Hagidula, V'Hagivura, V'Chatiferet, V'Chanetzach, V'Chachod, Ki Cho Bashamayim Uvaretz, Ki Cho Bashamayim Uvaretz, Lecha Adonai Hamamlacha, V'Cha Mitnaseh Lechol Rosh Ramemu, Ramemu, Adonai Eloheinu, V'yishtachavu, V'yishtachavu, Lechadom Raglov Kadoshu, Ramemu, Ramemu, Adonai Eloheinu, V'yishtachavu, V'yishtachavu, Lechadom Raglav Kadoshu, Ki Kadosh Adonai Eloheinu.
Shabbat Shalom. The other day, as I was walking my dog through my neighborhood, my quiet, beautiful, flower-blooming neighborhood, I was listening to the news, and maybe I shouldn't have been listening to the news, and it probably would have been better for me to be more present just with the beauty around me. But alas, it was a moment where I could pause and pay attention to what was going on in the world. And I very sadly heard a story, an account of a Ukrainian woman talking about trying to flee the conflict. She was fleeing a city, fleeing her home with her family in her car, and came across a set of Russian soldiers who let them through. But then another set of Russian soldiers chose to attack the car instead. And they were all inside. And I believe everyone lived, but there were significant injuries. My anger really rose up in me, and I just, I was contemplating the injustice done to these unarmed, innocent civilians, a family with children. And I'm sure that this is just one of thousands and probably millions of stories of what's happening. We know, I think it's over 2 million people now who are fleeing, have fled, and are trying to flee. And as I began to think of this Shabbat in this week's Torah portion and the special Shabbat that we have, I felt, and what I might speak about, I felt that I needed to talk about Amalek. And Amalek is a character that appears in this week's special reading that Emily will soon read from us. It's in the book of Deuteronomy near the very end of the Torah. And today's a special Shabbat. It's the Shabbat before Purim, which begins next Wednesday evening. And this Shabbat is called Shabbat Zachor, the Shabbat of remembering. Now, I'm going to just read the English of what Emily will be chanting, and she's also going to talk about it a little bit before and after she chants. But it goes like this. Remember what Amalek did to you on your journey after you left Egypt, how, undeterred by fear of God, he surprised you on the march when you were famished and weary and cut down all the stragglers in your rear. Therefore, when your God Adonai grants you safety from all your enemies around you in the land that your God Adonai is giving you as a hereditary portion, you shall blot out the memory of Amalek from under heaven. Do not forget. This section in Deuteronomy recalls an event in Exodus where the Israelites had just emerged from crossing the Sea of Reeds. They have just escaped, this encroachment of the entire Egyptian army. And Amalek, their attacks, they're innocent from behind. It's this very thing that happens. Not the soldiers, not the strongest, but just the innocent, the weary, the stragglers are attacked. The attacker was this Amalekite people led by Amalek, their leader. And throughout history, Jewish people have come to refer to any evil doer against the Jews collectively as Amalek. We'll even use it, I hear it in sentences. We'll just want to say, we'll talk about, just the Amalek of this or that Amalek then. So why is this Shabbat called Shabbat Zachor? It's said, and why do we read this, and why is this all happening right now? It's said that Haman, who's the villain of the story of Purim, which is this next week, is a direct descendant of Amalek. And hence we have this special Shabbat, and we remember Amalek as we prepare to remember Haman. And as we blot out Haman's name, we thus blot out his ancestor Amalek. So interestingly, we're commanded to blot out his memory, which would imply to forget him. If the memory is blotted out, right, like we can't remember it anymore. And yet in reading the Torah and in reading the Megillah, there is a remembering. The Torah reading itself says, do not forget. Remember to forget. Remember to blot out. But you must not forget to remember so that you can forget. I thought of, a Mobius strip where, so it was as if one side is remember and the other is forget, and they're just intertwined and they keep running into each other. It's all in one in this very interesting commandment and that we're needing to observe right now. I wondered about why should we remember to not forget the forgetting of the villain, or should we say the evil? So with all of this, as you probably guessed, I can't help but think of today and the modern equivalent of Amalek unfolding as we speak with Russia's invasion of Ukraine. This unprovoked war is forcing us to remember that this kind of thing is still so very much for real. It reminds many of us that no matter how far we as a species living in a web of connected civilization, no matter how far we've come, unprovoked war with a seeming lack of care for those who are defenseless is still possible within us as a species. And we're reminded that we're capable of doing this to each other. And I just need to say, I didn't want to remember any of this. I wanted to forget this, right? I mean, we can all say, who wants to remember this? Who wants to know this? Who wants to see? None of us. So why do we have a Shabbat dedicated to remembering this? Remembering to forget so we won't forget. Wouldn't it be better to just forget? Why must we recall these things, these villains, again and again? Why is this commanded of us with these words of Torah given on this special Shabbat and in next week's reading of the Megillah? We read their names, right? The name Amalek shows up 3 times, 3 instances in the Torah and in other texts, and Haman's name is like all over the Megillah. Like they could have actually, they could just put the bad guy. Like they could have taken it out. They didn't. They kept the name in there. So they say, right, that history repeats itself. They teach history in school so we can know how things came to be as they are now, and this is really important. And so perhaps we might learn from the past. Perhaps we can do it better and not repeat the mistakes from before. Because some really bad stuff has happened, and the world never needs to have these bad things happen again. But too often, as we know so well, they do happen again. And I felt like saying, though, what's the Torah in our tradition wanting from us with all of this remembering? Why do we need to have this such intentionality around remembering? Doesn't life give us enough examples of our human collective forgetting to remember? And thus humans still perpetuate evil upon each other. Maybe I thought that the Torah is in part a mirror holding up to us saying, yes, it will repeat itself. It has, it is, and it will. And the Torah says, I see you. I hear you. Maybe this is why. I read one commentary that said, Torah tells us to blot out Amalek's memory, the memory of the person, but Torah does not tell us to blot out the bad thing that happened. We're to blot out the person who did the bad thing, as if to say, let go of the bad individual. Others will come and go, but don't let go of the fact of the reality of the existence of adversaries in general who wish us harm. This is always real and will be real ongoing. By remembering, we'll be prepared. We must remain vigilant even as we let go. We will not step blindly forward. And this I found helpful. I also read an article this week written by Rabbi Jeffrey Salkin, who's from Florida, about the question, he wrote this week, about the question of comparing what's happening now with Russia and Ukraine to Amalek. And he wrote, is there nothing redemptive in all this? Is evil destined to last forever? He said, I turn to these words of the ancient sages in Talmud Gittin that say, some of Haman's descendants studied Torah in Bnei Brak, and some of Sisera's descendants taught Torah to children in Jerusalem, and some of Sennacherib's descendants taught Torah in public. Who are they? They are Shemaiah and Avtalan, the teachers of Hillel, Rabbi Hillel. So what Rabbi Salkin says is understand what the Talmud is saying. 3 of the most evil people in the Hebrew Bible had descendants who not only joined the Jewish people, but became great scholars and teachers. The reviled Haman, the Canaanite general Sisera in the book of Judges, and the Assyrian king Sennacherib, who destroyed the northern kingdom of Israel. In fact, the very teachers of the saintly Hillel were among Sennacherib's descendants. So what is the message, says Rabbi Salkin? Bad people can produce good descendants. Evil is not inevitable. There is always hope. I felt so grateful to find this teaching and that this teaching is in the Talmud, because it shows us the possibility of tshuva, of repentance, of returning to a just path for those who have descended from the Amalek, the ones we're to blot out. Talmud here lifts up the idea of tikkun, of healing, of repair, of righting what was wrong, and about forgiveness, that it's made possible when people part from their ancestral destinies. So our tradition gives us hope that the darkness will shift even as it asks us to prepare for the inevitability of darkness. Now, I still wasn't satisfied with these. These were good, a good beginning. So then I really joyfully found 2 Hasidic teachings that helped. And it just so happened that both of these teachings came out of the Jewry of Ukraine. And I felt really moved by that. So one is from the 18th century and one is from the 19th century. The first is from 18th century Hasidic master Levi Yitzhak of Berdichev, who wrote in the Kiddushat Levi. Each Jew has to wipe out that negative part that is called Amalek hidden in her heart. So long as the descendants of Amalek are in the world, and each of us is also an Olam Katan, a small world. So when the power of evil in each of us arises, that which leads us to sin, Amalek is still in the world. The reminder to wipe out Amalek calls out from the Torah. So we all need to remember the capacity within ourselves to be like Amalek. The world holds Amalek, and each of us is a world in and of ourselves. So this is thus a warning to us to tend the darkness within. So the Torah says, know the fullness of yourself, work on yourself, and by doing so, you're fulfilling the commandment to remember and to blot out. Then I found this 19th century Rav Yaakov Katina, who wrote in something called the Korban He'oni, the poor man's offering. He said, the battle against the evil inclination is not like other battles where one can have a decisive permanent victory over a given enemy. Even if one defeats the evil inclination 100 times and leaves it alone by itself for even an instant, it immediately gains the upper hand. Therefore, a person must be engaged in the battle against the evil inclination her whole life. If one lets her hands down, Amalek prevails. So this commentary expands that of the first, and it recalls the original story in Exodus of Amalek, in which Moses would lift his hands up and the Israelites would persevere against Amalek, but when his hands fell down, Amalek would prevail. And there were people who were holding his hands up to keep them up. It's hard to hold your hands up for a really long time if you've ever tried. So this teaching is telling us that we too must keep our hands up. Keep at it. Keep at this tending of our own potential for darkness, because it doesn't just vanish. It will reappear and need to be blotted out again and again. And so Torah says, I need you not to forget to stay at it. And Judaism says, every day we need to reflect on our deeds. And every year we need to atone fully, like an annual computer reboot or a system upgrade. We need to keep at the actual work of inner repair so that we can step forward into all that the next year will bring. Every day is an opportunity to remember our human frailty. And the destruction of Amalek sadly needs to be something that we're prepared to do and we need to actually do. And I just thought to imagine if we all did this inner work, every one of us, maybe, just maybe, all the wars could be checked, stopped before they became what we're seeing is unfolding today in Ukraine. May we keep our hands up, and may we ask for help from others to keep them up when we need that help, so that we may never forget this imperative to see, to tend, and transform ourselves. May it be so. Ken Yehi Ratzon. Shabbat Shalom.
Oh, you have it marked? Good. Shabbat Shalom, everybody. Rabbi Julie Yasher on what you just talked about, and on it's Deuteronomy chapter 25, and Rabbi Benioff just read it in English for us, but what I want to point out and when I want to call up for this aliyah is that 3 separate times we are told to remember. And Zachor, the first word that we get, is the standard traditional spelling of Zachor with an A sound underneath the ts sound. Okay? And then in verse 19, we are told once again to remember. And the words that you're going to hear me chant, you're going to hear me say the word remember twice. Because one of the ways in which it's written in the Tikkun, and the Tikkun is the book with the vowels in it and the trope marks, and then there's in the Torah where there are no vowels and trope marks. And the word is zecher, okay? And it's either pronounced as zecher, okay, or there is an alternate translation and an alternate pronunciation, which is zecher, okay? And you're going to hear me do it twice. So the Mishnah talks about why is that? Why do we get this same word pronounced twice and pronounced differently? And the reason is because there are different people who hear things differently. So the easy way to think about it is the Lubavitcher Glitzianer. How did you pronounce it in the old country? Oh, we didn't pronounce it that way. We pronounced it this way. Or Spanish Castilian, Spanish, versus, let's say, Spanish from the Dominican Republic. And how it's the same word, but it sounds so different. So the shot answer for the question was that it was a way to make sure that everybody was hearing and understanding the commandment, and to make sure that we all got it. But the intention that I would like to call up for this Aliyah, and I really hope that some of the people on Zoom will also feel moved to stand up and join this, because we don't have 10 people in the room. So I'd really, if there's anybody who this resonates with, in addition to anybody in this room who this resonates with, so that we really make sure we have 10 people during reading the Torah, I'd appreciate it, is for those of you who, following up on what Rabbi was talking about, who aren't always sure if they're hearing the call. And if we go back to Vayikra, and thank you, Carol, for your absolutely wonderful Torah study this morning. If we go back to Vayikra, and God called. So this is the call for us to remember. And I think of how often difficult it can be for us to know that we're hearing the call, and for us to know what we're being asked to do. So that's one part of the Aliyah that I would like to name and call people up for that. And then the other part of this that I would like to name is that when we talk, when we ask people to do things, when we say, listen to what I am calling you to do. And I think of this often in my racial justice work, and I'm thinking of this a lot for myself for the base presentation that we're doing here on March 21st, is what words am I using that are open to everybody and that everybody can hear what I say? And I sometimes wonder if it's not getting across because of the language that I'm using, and perhaps I'm not using the right pronunciation so that everybody can hear it. So for anybody who is moved to want to either honor the notion of what is the call and what am I being asked to do, or how am I calling out to others and is there a better way that I can do it, or wants to gain some strength from the Torah in these very difficult things, I invite you to come on up for the Aliyah. I do, thank you. Oh, wow. Oh, God. You're going to have to hold that open for me. Yeah, wowie zowie. Okay. Thank you all. Baruch Adonai Hamvarach V'Olam Va'ed.
Baruch Adonai Hamvarach V'Olam Va'ed. Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu Melech Haolam Asher bachar banu mikol hamim, ונתן לנו את תורתו, ברוך אתה אדוני, נותן התורה.
Amen. Zachor et asher asacha lechacha Amalek baderek b'tzetechem mimitzrayim asher karachacha baderek vayitna vayitzanev bechacha kol ha'nechet shalim acharecha ve'atacha ayev ve'yagea ve'loho yareh Elohim ve'hayaha Bechaniach Adonai Elohecha lecha mikol oyevecha misaviv ba'aretz asher Adonai Elohecha noten lecha nachalacha lirishtacha Tim et zecher Amalek mitachat hashamayim lo tishkach.
ברוך אתה אדוני, אלוהינו מלך העולם, אשר נתן לנו תורת אמת, בחיי עולם נתן אלוהינו, ברוך אתה אדוני, נותן התורה.
Amen, and I'd like to give you all a blessing. Mishe Barak Avotenu ve'imotenu. May the one who gives us the capacity to remember, may the one who gives us the capacity to question and to know that perhaps we're not always doing everything right, may that spirit flow through you. May you feel confident in your decisions, and may you never, ever, ever stop seeking. Amen. Great, terrific, terrific. Okay. Beautiful.
We're going to do a prayer for healing. Because is the sound working online? We're not sure. So why don't we say, okay, we can try again and see if the sound online is working, if anyone on name wants to say. And if it's not working, we'll invite you to write the names in the chat, and then Steve will share those with us.
Edlin, Dawn,
Anyone in this room?
My cousin, Terry, my friend, Janet, my friend Owen.
Terry, Janet, and Owen. Daniel Meyer, Ben Avraham Vasara. Maynard and Sally Telpner. Martin Shear.
I'll go ahead and read the names that are in the chat.
Oh, thank you so much,
Yeah.
Barry.
So we have Carol Sunahara said Edlin and Dawn. And then we have Joe Portnoy, and Kaylin Moon Portnoy. And I'd like to add Michael Bauer and Maxie Bauer.
Thank you. And in our community, we're also thinking of Yehudit Azna Bat Lina Avraham, Hanadine Schultz, Sifra, Bobby Schultz, David Wilcox, Elisa Friedlander, Tzipora Epstein, Harav Chaya Sarah Mina Bat Rivka Baila, Harav Miriam Yael Bat Yitzhak Vasara, Chaya Bat Gittel Verhirsch, Della Spector, Sally Telpner, Avital Cohen, Isa Martinez, Tony Heald, Sarah Rivka Bat Zahira Yael, Sophia Harris, Janice Litchin, Sanford Goldberg, Lola Sonnenschein, Roxanne Weinberger, Talia Weinberger, Alan Gale, Pam Davis, Howard Booster, Eliana Hirsch, Azrael Ben David Vitalma, Harriet Bachmuel Vimiriam, Carlotta Spears, Linda Barcalau, Rich Karchmer, Lynn Stolzer, Steve Stolzer, and Hadassah Johanna Chaya Klein. I'd like to also add the people of Ukraine and the people in the neighboring countries who are absorbing refugees and tending so much holding that they're giving. The people of Russia who don't want this war, including the soldiers, President Vladimir Zelensky, and all people everywhere who are at this time falling victim to the actions of the Amaleks of this day. Ana Elna Rifana La, Ana Elna Rifana La, from deep within the home of my soul. Now let the healing begin. Heal our bodies, open our hearts, awaken our minds. Hey, yeah. Heal our bodies, open our hearts, awaken our minds. Shechina, Ana Elna, Refana La, Ana Elna, Refana La. We're about to do Hagba and Glila. Joanne, I'm wondering, would you like to do Glila, to wrap the Torah? Joanne, would you like to wrap the Torah after we have Hagba? Thank you.
Hallelujah, Shem Adonai, Ki niskav Shemo Levado. Avdu haaretz v'shamayim, vayaren keren le'amo, tehila lechol hasidav livnei Yisrael am karovo. Hallelujah, hallelujah. Of life for those who our people are happy. It is a tree of life for those who are happy, and all of its people are happy. Oh, 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 oh. Shalom, 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 shalom. Yeah. Shalom, 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 shalom. And now, on page 257. Ki lechak tov natati lachem torati al tazovu etz chaim hi lamachazikim ba v'tomcheha meushar derachecha darchei noam v'chol netivotecha shalom hashivenu Adonai elecha v'nashuva chadesh yameinu kekedem.
I found a beautiful reading in our prayer book this morning that I thought would be a nice way of entering into our closing prayers. It's called Connections by Marge Piercy. Page 358. Please join me if you'd like. Connections are made slowly. Sometimes they grow underground. You cannot tell always by looking what is happening. More than half a tree is spread out in the soil under your feet. Penetrate quietly as the earthworm that blows no trumpet. Fight persistently as the creeper that brings down the tree. Spread like the squash plant that overruns the garden. Gnaw in the dark and use the sun to make sugar. Weave real connections. Create real nodes. Build real houses. Live a life you can endure. Make love that is loving. Keep tangling and interweaving and taking more in. A thicket and bramble wilderness to the outside, but to us interconnected with rabbit runs and burrows and lairs. Live as if you liked yourself, and it may happen. Reach out, keep reaching out, keep bringing in. This is how we are going to live for a long time. Not always, for every gardener knows that after the digging, after the planting, after the long season of tending and growth, the harvest comes. Helenu can be found on page 375, and we rise as we are able. Aleinu l'shapeach l'adon hakol, Latit Gdula Liotzer Breshit, Shenatan Lanu Torah Emet, V'chaye Olam Nata Betochenu, V'anachnu Korim, Umishtachavim Umotim, Lifnei Melech Malchei Hamlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. שהוא נוטה שמיים ויוסד הארץ, ומושב יקרו בשמיים ממעל, ושכינתו זו בגובי מרומים. הוא אלוהינו אין עוד, אמת מלכנו וסולתו, ככתוב בתורתו, וידעת היום והשבות אל לבבך, כי אדוני הוא האלוהים בשמיים ממעל, ועל הארץ מתחת אין עוד. ככתוב בתורתך, אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד, ונאמר, והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ, ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד, ושמו אחד, ושמו אחד. We will now turn to Mourner's Kaddish. And I invite those on Zoom to share names that you're remembering.
I just like to say that it's difficult for people on Zoom to be heard. So go ahead and put the names in the chat and I will read them. Thank you. Sandy Moore.
I'll invite names of those in this room. We remember loved ones of congregants who've died in the past year: David Kletter, Michael Basin, Marvin Sklan, Ed Ilson, Daniel Charles Dietz, Louise Reifman, Harriet Bellinson, Trudy Schuster, Luba Fine Carlton, Betty First, Jessica Spirit, and Ted Hannon. We also remember all who have died in the Matzav in Israel, and all who have lost their lives in the Ukraine and across the world. The Shabbat marks the yahrzeit of Ronald Solid, Dylan Michael Perry, Louis Prince, Philip McAlmond, Frank Farber, Anita Tamar, Bobby Bradley, Peggy Gruling, Robert Hirschman, Rose Hoffman Rubin, Elizabeth Colson, Abraham Sparks, Rosalind Rathsam, Claire Zlatschur, Bertha Shaw, Abraham Albert Bresnik, Marilyn McClaskey, June Maddock, and Bessie Empel.
We did have a couple more names in the chat: Tony Moriarty and Vina Rexinger. Thank you.
Thank you. Page 380. Yitkadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabbah, bi'alma divra chirutei v'yamlich malchutei, b'chayechon uvyomechon uv'chayei d'chol Beit Yisrael, bagala uvizman kariv v'imru amen. Yehei shmei Rabbah mivarach le'olam u'lalmei almaya, yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh, Vitadar, Vitale, Vitalal, Shemeda Kudesha, Brichu, Leela min kol birchata v'shirata, tushbachata v'nechamata, da'amiran be'alma v'imru, Amen. Yehe shlama rabba min shemaya, v'chayim tovim alenu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru, Amen. Oseh shalom b'imromav, huya aseh shalom, alenu v'al kol Yisrael, v'al kol yoshvei tevel, v'imru, Amen. So it's good to be together today. Thank you. Thank you to for those who are here and those who are in support, helping. For announcements, I'm going to have Emily Simon come up and do one of the announcements, and then either Joanne or David, if you'd come up and do the others. David, okay, great.
I really invite and I really hope that everybody hearing this comes on March 21st, 7 o'clock on Zoom between 7 and 8:30 to hear a presentation by BASE, the Black Alliance for Social Empowerment, that is here in the Rogue Valley, and that will be presenting to us a program on the history of racism within the Rogue Valley, how Jews and Blacks can come together again to work on a specific project that BASE is working on, that I've been involved with for 2 years. So I really hope that we get a good turnout with a lot of people, and it's the opportunity to learn something and to hear something in perhaps a way that you haven't heard it before. So, thanks.
Thank you, Emily, and so grateful for your leadership with that. So, David, that was one of the announcements, so you don't have to announce that one now.
Great.
Okay.
Before I start, we'll start with the most important announcement that Joanne will share.
What's that?
The mitzvah.
Oh, mitzvah moment. It's mitzvah moment time, and it's mitzvah moment time. And you've all gotten your invitations and your beautiful cards. And
Earth Day. Is it Earth Day?
oh, yes, and Earth Day. Earth Day is April 24th. And we're going to have it here at the synagogue, and we are going to have a wonderful group of people coming out. We're going to have cars, we're going to have La Clinica, we're going to have food, we're going to have things for children, and we want everybody to come out from the community, not just the Jewish community, but the community at large. And it's going to be a fun day. It's going to be from 1 o'clock till 4 o'clock in our parking lot. And there's going to be cars to look at and to drive. And it's just going to be a great day.
Electric cars.
Electric cars.
Yo,
Yes. Thank you.
but not ours.
Not ours.
Oh, well. Shabbat Shalom. Please don't forget to come out en masse this Wednesday, 7 p.m. for our adult Megillah reading. Lots of fun. And we actually read the whole Megillah, and we do it in under an hour, and we have lots of fun. So you can't have a party if nobody comes. Please come, whether you're on Zoom or on Zoom. Come on and Zoom. Also, please mark your calendars and come. No, right. People of the Books class with Rabbi Ken Ehrlich is March 17th at 3:30 p.m. And Rabbi Julie, too. And I've been told by people who've gone that she is amazing. We all know that anyways. So, again, thank you all. Shabbat Shalom. Okay, yeah.
Next Shabbos is a community minyan led by this guy.
No, facilitated by me. We have over 16 people taking part in the service next week, in person, and many on Zoom as well. So we hope to see you all. Come be part of it. Thank you. Shabbat Shalom.
Thank you. Next week's service, Marty Tobin will be chanting Torah and giving the Devar Torah. Emily Simon will be leading the Torah reading. And the Shabbat after that will be a special Shabbat where I will be at the Reconstructionist Convention in Virginia, and some services will be streamed from that convention, including one that I'm leading, as well as another service that we can participate in starting at 9 a.m., and Emily Simon will be one of the laners at that service. So lots of options for a Zoom day on March 26th. So I think that's all the news. Thank you. It's a beautiful day. I hope you can really step into the rest of your day with peace, with your heightened awareness to the blessings and wonders and marvels, and to the love of your life, the loves of your life. And may it be a day that generates peace and healing with you and transformation that will ripple out into all the ways. And I even heard that I have to announce that Steve Portnoy is getting a puppy today. So I wish the Portnoy household a joyous puppy day. Oh, that is so cool. Yay. Hooray for puppies. And for just closing, I'm going to return us back to our opening song, Min HaMetzar Karataya, calling in that idea of calling, being called, calling out, being heard, yearning for whatever we're yearning for, and being able to speak it boldly, courageously, and to receive the calls of each other in our own hearts. Min hametzar kaharatia anani v'hamechavya. Min hametzar kaharatia anani v'hamechavya. Anani, 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 v'hamechavya. Anani, 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 v'hamechavya. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
Sei
Good
gesund.
Friday.
Good job.
Good Shabbos.